Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. I'm happy to be here with you today as we will be discussing Middle East policy, the U.S. international policy in a region that is a volatile powder keg that has been going gangbusters for decades at the least. Where does the Biden administration stand, and what can we see happening right now as Iran has taken on a new hardline stance with the latest presidential election? What will be happening in the near term, and how will it affect you? We're going to address all of that in just a moment. But first, if this is the first time that you've joined us on this channel, we thank you and welcome you. And we want you to know that we do long-form political commentary. And every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream every week talking with you directly. That's on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, DLive, reaching out to you on all social media that the internet overlords will allow to hear your voice, to hear your thoughts and your phone calls about what you think is going on in the world and in our nation. We look forward to seeing you every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time from anywhere in the world. Now on to the issue that is going on today. As we have been speaking about since January 21st of 2021, the Biden administration has been very quietly taking actions in the Middle East, and they are having significant repercussions. In fact, if we think back, in 2020, the U.S. position, the international policy of the United States was non-existent in the discussion of the 2020 elections. And that is in part because the Democratic Party didn't have much to offer the American people. The Democratic Party had opposed the move of the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. We saw that the Democratic Party, many of its members, like Ilhan Omar and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, among others who were outspoken in the party, opposed Israel and supported Palestine, which effectively means the government of Palestine is Hamas, a global terrorist organization that is a proxy for Iran and its efforts at global terrorism. We see that in 2020, the Democratic Party had bad relations going back to 2009 with the Obama administration, with Joe Biden as vice president, having very bad relations with Israel, and in particular, the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. And then there is the support of the YPG. That's a group, a Kurdish group in northern Iraq and in Syria that borders with Turkey and is considered a terrorist organization by Turkey. Now, Turkey happens to be a lukewarm ally of the United States in the Middle East, and so the support of the YPG is a concern that started with the Obama administration and has continued to this day, and is a sticking point of a lack of friendship between the United States and Turkey. And then there's also the Iran nuclear deal, which Democrats have been desperate to get back in place. This is the 2015 Obama administration policy that, according to then Secretary John Kerry, would and did allow the United States to fund global terror through Iran. The $450 billion of that deal, based on sanctions that were removed by the United States, allowed Iran to fund global terror around the world. So when looking at the Democrats' position in 2020, when compared to the Trump administration in 2020, in that year alone, having brokered 4 peace deals between Israel, the United States' greatest and most secure and stable ally in the Middle East, with 4 other Arab nations, unprecedented history having taken place, a more stable Middle East being able to be seen on the horizon, the Biden administration the Biden campaign didn't want to talk about this. But as you can see, there are a lot of moving parts in this story. And this is important because even though there's so many moving parts, it's about stability. And the more stable that the Middle East can be, the better it is for everyone in the world, especially as the United States has troops in Iraq, in Syria at this moment, and we are funding various different groups to conduct fighting for us in those regions as well. And that also affects oil and energy and inflation here in the United States. It's a big deal what the United States Middle East policy is. And again, that's why there was no go from Joe Biden about Middle East policy or international policy of the United States at all. Nothing more than hearing from Joe Biden stating he knew all of the players from the time he was in the Senate and also in the vice presidency under Barack Obama, and therefore that would be sufficient. Well, here it is, 2021, and we've seen that just knowing about Joe Biden is not sufficient to improve the United States' position in the world. And it is not sufficient to improve world peace. We've seen that since January 21st, when Joe Biden, on his first day in office, decided to send in more troops into Syria and increase the tensions in the Syrian civil war, and of course, the region where we see that Iran and Russia and China all have positions and have different players involved in all of the fighting and all of the tensions. And the Middle East has effectively become far less stable. Since the Biden administration has taken over, in April they provided $235 million to Palestine, of which $78 million was virtually in cash, which allowed Hamas to buy 4,000 rockets from Iran, which supports Hamas, and then they engaged in the fourth Israeli-Palestinian war, sending off 4,000 rockets to harm and kill Israeli civilians, men, women, and children. This is a big deal. But this is part of the Biden administration's ultimate goal, which is not to stabilize the Middle East, but to regain the Iran nuclear deal, to resurrect and save the Obama administration in the history books, to be able to have a claim of world peace, which is not accurate, as we have seen, as we said, John Kerry has already come out and stated, this is the United States funding global terror. The United States has already funded global terror in what we believe was a hand to Iran by providing Hamas with tens of millions of dollars to show good faith towards Iran. And then, of course, that resulted in an attack on civilians. And it gets worse from there, because we have seen that Iran has consistently been saying they do not want any sanctions, that they will not engage in any conversation with the United States unless the Iran nuclear deal is returned to the same condition as it was in 2015, meaning Iran has no sanctions, they're able to build missiles, including ICBMs, to attack Israel and the United States and Europe, and that they would be able to fund global terror. And we've seen that the most recent election in Iran has made this even more of an issue. As we can see, as the AP is reporting today, that Iran's president-elect is taking a hard line and refuses to meet Joe Biden. This was from a little over an hour ago. Now, this individual is Ebrahim Raisi. And Mr. Raisi is known for his his part in the 1988 mass execution of political prisoners at the end of the Iran-Iraq War. He is someone who is known for war crimes, but he is also one of the hand-picked successors of the current Ayatollah of Iran. And he is a significant hard-line militant in the Iran government. And he has taken the position that it is non-negotiable in terms of Iran's ballistic missile program, and that the United States is believed to be so weak that they are stating that the U.S. is obligated to lift all oppressive sanctions against Iran. Effectively, Iran wants no hand-holding. It wants the ability to increase its terror, the reach of its terror through missiles around the world, and they want that funded by the United States for the promise that they would not build nuclear weapons, although the Ayatollah Khomeini has consistently stated in 2015, 2016, and since that Iran will continue to make nuclear weapons, and that we have seen many times for decades where Iran has made promises to the United States and the UN and then has turned around and broken those promises. But the Biden administration believes them. And the Biden administration is stating that they believe that this does not change anything, that Iran is still on track to have the Iran nuclear deal reinitiated, and that their position has not weakened at all. In fact, when speaking to the White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki on Monday, today, that's June 21st, she stated that the U.S. does not have diplomatic relations with Iran, or quote, or any plans to meet at the leader level, so it's unclear that anything has actually changed on that front, end quote. Although she's ignoring the fact that the Biden administration has been in conversations and negotiations with Iran for 2 months now, that they have been looking to try and find an inroad on this Iran nuclear deal. And the idea of meeting with Iran seems not to come from Iran, but coming from the Biden administration itself. But to understand this and to understand what's going to happen with the Iran nuclear deal, what's going to happen with Iran possibly being funded by the United States to support global terror, we have to understand, where is this all coming from? We're trying to make this as simple for you as we can, folks. There's a lot of details here. The thing that we need to understand is that what's happening right now has already been predicted. The predictions are out as we speak. Because if we look, Saudi Arabia has already been making clear what they think the Biden administration is going to do. We see that Saudi Arabia has now started, as of May 30th, actually as of April 9th, Saudi Arabia has been reaching out to Iran to reestablish economic and diplomatic ties between the two nations. Now, it was clear that in 2016, these nations went separate ways. Ties between the two nations, as reported by the Times of Israel, that those two nations cut their diplomatic and economic ties in 2016 after Iranian protesters attacked Saudi diplomatic missions following the Saudi Arabia's government, their kingdom's execution of a revered Shiite cleric. But now we see, as of May, beginning of June, Saudi Arabia has now taken the position that de-escalation and establishing Salaman, or economic ties between the two great Islamic countries in the Persian Gulf region, is for the benefit of both nations. Well, that's a new tone. And that tone is directly coming from the fact that Joe Biden doesn't support Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia knows that. This is not a new thing. In fact, the 2020 election campaign had Joe Biden stating that he was going to hold Saudi Arabia accountable because of the death of a member of the press, and that this would destabilize the region. And we see that since that time, after winning the election, the Biden administration has completely backed down, as stated by the Associated Press in their article on March 2nd, 2021, that Joe Biden broke his promise to voters. He broke his promise to the far left, and he broke his promise with the news media in not moving forward, something that he held against President Trump. And President Trump had said that this was something that could not be moved forward without destabilizing the Middle East. It seems that Joe Biden has come to that same conclusion. At the same time, though, Joe Biden is under massive pressure from Democrats and progressives and socialists in the United States to hold Saudi Arabia accountable, to put pressure on Saudi Arabia, including economic sanctions, because of the death of the reporter Khashoggi. The Senate Intelligence Committee Chairman, Mark Warner, stated, quote, "This is a dangerous neighborhood, and the Saudis are critical in terms of keeping pressure on Iran. Rights groups and few Saudi dissidents who in exile who still dare to speak say the United States is making a mistake. They say that Prince Mohammed's actions in his first 5 years in power show he's not bound by international norms or diplomatic persuasions." Sorry about that, folks. And waiving penalties on Mohammed bin Salman now also sends a signal to Saudis on the succession when Salman dies, they say. So what we're seeing is there is extreme pressure on the Biden administration to hold Saudi Arabia accountable. Saudi Arabia, realizing this and seeing how the Biden administration has capitulated to China, has capitulated to Russia, has been pushed around by North Korea, realizing that there is not a lot of strength in the Biden administration, especially looking at the G7 summit, where we saw Biden making multiple gaffes during meetings, being lost in his comments with the press, being lost and walking into the wrong cafe from time to time. This is not a showing of strength by the United States. And therefore, if the Saudi Arabia is not going to be backed by the United States, they need to make friends with Iran. This is especially true because at this moment, Saudi Arabia has been losing a war. That's in Yemen. According to as detailed as you can see here by foreignpolicy.com, Washington has Yemen's policy backward. The United States is failing because Saudi Arabia has been involved in a fight in Yemen since about 2015. The Houthi organization, their rebels and fighters, are in fact a proxy group for Iran. This is Iran's fight in Yemen. And Saudi Arabia has been fighting against them with the backing of the United States. But the United States has been failing and has been lagging in its support of Saudi Arabia. And the Iran-backed rebels have won the ground defense. They have taken over the ground. And we can see here, as stated by foreignpolicy.com, with Saleh's support, the Houthis took control of Sinai and forced Hadi to resign after fleeing to Yemeni city of Aden and later to Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. Hadi rescinded his resignation, but since 2015, he has been president in name only. The actual support, the individuals, the government that was supported by Saudi Arabia and the United States no longer has any relevance. In fact, when we take a look at this, the fact is that there is a UN resolution, which is Resolution 2216. It's unrealistic and outdated because it doesn't take into account that that Iran has won. The Houthis are winning in the north. Southern separatists, such as the Southern Transitional Council, hold sway in the south. Meanwhile, competing militias continue to multiply because violence offers the only means of accessing resources and a possible seat at the future negotiating table. The area continues to splinter the longer the war continues to go on, but Saudi Arabia has failed. It's the government that Saudi Arabia supported failed. Iran has won. And without the support of the United States, Saudi Arabia cannot continue to fight against Iran. Therefore, we see that Saudi Arabia has taken the position to make amends with Iran, rather to be friends with Iran rather than be by themselves fighting a battle that they cannot win, knowing that the Biden administration is going to back to pressure and not provide them any help, even as the United States has signaled several times that it will help Iran by giving in and giving Hamas funding, which allowed global terror, and knowing full well that the United States in 2015 was more than willing to give Iran $450 billion in sanctions relief and will probably do so again, if not even more. So that brings us to a very simple conclusion. We see the future of the Middle East. The future of the Middle East is the United States being too weak to have a position. The United States has already signaled under the Biden administration that we will be leaving Iraq. And we have an actual date set for that, telling every terrorist, telling every faction exactly when they need to marshal their forces to try and take control in the power vacuum that will be created. The United States has been involved in Syria, and that is a conflict that has no end. But if the United States has no backbone to be in Iraq, the likelihood of the Biden administration staying in Syria with the pressure growing is unlikely. The fact that the United States will not be able to rely on its allies in Turkey because of its support of the YPG, which is a terrorist group, is not adding to the stability of the Middle East. The fact that the Biden administration has directly aided and abetted Hamas, a global terrorist organization, against the only ally the United States has in Israel, and allowed 4,000 rockets to be targeted against Israeli women and children, is a sign that the United States is more than happy to bend over backwards for Iran as soon as they can make it look politically good. Which means that Iran is on the rise, and that Iran will have more money to fund more global terror and to attack its enemies more directly. Now, that doesn't add up to a good picture. Yemen is with Iran. Palestine is with Iran. Saudi Arabia is trying to make friends with Iran. Iraq will be a power vacuum, with Iran having some of the largest troops positioned and ready to try and take over that power vacuum when the Biden administration leaves. This is a bad deal. We can predict, as Saudi Arabia has been predicting, as Yemen has showed us, as we see as a result of Hamas attacking Israel, we can see that stability in the Middle East, it will increase in the favor of Iran. And the hardliners in Iran are more than willing to kill everyone else, considering the fact that their new president, Ebrahim Raisi, was the same man who was willing to kill his own Iraqi citizens and killing political prisoners. They're willing to do that to their own people. What do you think they're going to do to the people that they consider devils and demons, meaning Israel and the United States? And what will they do to any country that is being supported and being backed up by the United States, a nation they want to eliminate? We have our answer. The Biden administration, in 5 months, has effectively reversed the growth of stability that we saw under the Trump administration and the 4 historic peace treaties that were made during his final term. In less than 5 months, we have seen the future for the Middle East. The future of the Middle East is Iran, with greater power, greater funding, and greater terror. It's not too late to stop this, but we have to ask a question. You saw Joe Biden try and walk up those stairs. You saw Joe Biden at the G7 meeting being scolded by France, being scolded by Macron, by being lost in the conversations and the locations he was supposed to be in. Let me ask you, you've seen China scold the United States. You've seen Russia just laugh in the face of Joe Biden and the United States by effect. Do you believe that Joe Biden and the Biden administration has the strength to reject this, to stop this path to power by Iran? Do you think that the proxy leader of the United States, Kamala Harris, is going to step up and be a strong leader when she couldn't even be strong at the United States southern border? She couldn't be strong with Mexico. She wasn't strong with Guatemala. And she has no plan, in part because she won't even go to the southern border to see what the problem actually is. No, we predict the Middle East will become less favorable to world peace. Global terror will increase, and the Biden administration ultimately will be the cause of that. But we want to hear what you think. We want to see what you believe. Have we missed a source? Have we misunderstood the conditions in the Middle East? Was this clear enough for you, or should we try and clarify it with more details? We look forward to hearing what you have to say in the comments. And if you have found this to be informative, interesting, please do subscribe, do like and share. But most of all, please do subscribe. And we look forward to seeing you every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to hear your voice on our live stream as we talk about the issues that matter to you. Until the next time, we thank you and we hope you'll be well.